So now that you know how to build things the hard way, by drawing them by hand, let's take a look at a tool within Sketch that allows us to combine basic shapes into more complex shapes. This tool is actually made up of 4 different tools that are collectively referred to as Boolean Operations. You'll find on your toolbar at the top of the screen that we have a button that says Union, followed by Subtract, followed by Intersect, followed by Difference. These are the 4 different modes that we have to combine 2 shapes. Start by opening up the booleanpractice.sketch document, and you'll find that I've got a few random, seemingly random shapes on 3 artboards. We're going to go a little out of order and start with the artboard labeled Football, Unite, and Intersect. With that artboard selected, I'm going to press Command 2 to zoom in. And then I'm going to point out that I have a bunch of little shapes that come together, and those are going to be the laces for our football. But the point is that they are a bunch of separate little shapes. And if we zoom in further, I'm going to press Command plus to zoom in further, we can see that these laces are made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 shapes. Now that's 12 shapes that it took to create the laces, but we don't need it to be 12 shapes. Now that we've created the overall visual of the laces for our football, they don't need to go on being 12 separate shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag around them to highlight them, and I'm going to press Union on the toolbar. Now I've just pressed Union, and you'll notice on the layers list, we went from having 12 separate layers to just having 1 layer. What's really cool about these Boolean operations is even though we've combined all of these shapes into one, I can still click on the disclosure triangle and see my individual subpaths. So if something was wrong with one of them, I can still move it around, I can still change the size of it, I can still edit the points. So I'm not going to put myself in a bad place if I make a mistake, or better yet, if I don't realize that I've made a mistake and later decide to make a change to one of those subpaths. But I'm going to collapse that because all of our subpaths are good, and we've got our football laces. So that's the idea of union. Union is just going to take several paths and combine them. It is by far the most straightforward of the 3. Subtract is also pretty straightforward. So before we continue with our football, I'm going to scroll to the left, and here is our moon. Now this is supposed to be a moon, but it's just a circle. It's a full moon. Doesn't really get the point across that it's a moon. I think it would be more effective if it were a crescent moon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Option key and drag a duplicate of this moon, and you'll notice as I drag, there's sort of this space between this circle and the original circle that looks like a crescent moon when I overlap them. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to move my cursor away and click away. See how this space here forms a crescent moon? It's the space if this circle were subtracted from this circle. So that's exactly what's about to happen. I'm going to select both circles. I'll click on the one in the front, hold Shift, click the one in the back, and then I'll choose Subtract for my Boolean operations. Now I've got my crescent moon. It simply subtracts the top circle from the bottom circle, and if I'm not sure if I like the crescent, again, with Subtract mode, because it's one of our Boolean operations, I can expand my moon layer, and I still have my 2 separate shapes. So I can select the second moon shape, and I can nudge it, I can move it around, I can edit it, and I can get the exact crescent that I'm looking for. So if I want a fatter crescent moon, I can do that. I can even scale it and change the shape of it, change the size of it. I can get myself exactly where I want to be after the fact. So there's not too much pressure to get it right the first time. So I'm going to collapse my moon, and there we have it. Looks pretty good. Now I'm going to scroll back over to our football, because we don't really have a football yet. We just have some laces on grass and then a big football-colored blob. So now we're going to look at intersect. So I'm going to move my football, or what is going to become my football, to the middle of our grass patch here. And then I'm going to hold Option and duplicate it, and create sort of a 50-50 overlap. There we go. That's about a 50-50 overlap. What I mean by a 50-50 overlap is the top of the bounding box for my second circle is pretty much in the middle of it's actually dead center in the middle of my first circle. And now with both of them selected, we can't really see this yet, not visually, but if we hit intersect, what it's going to do is it's going to take the overlapping areas and keep it. And it's going to delete or hide the areas that did not overlap. So intersect happens to give me the shape of a football. And I can reposition that, and now I can grab my laces, which are united as one layer, and I can drag those into the middle of my football. And I can nudge to reposition, put the laces a little higher than center so it has some depth to it. And there is my football on my grassy patch. Pretty cool. Intersect comes in handy quite a bit. The one that comes in handy, I would say the least, is difference. So let's go over to the next screen here. On this screen, I've got a computer screen or a TV screen. I guess it would be more like a TV screen. I designed the icon, so I should know. We'll call it a TV screen. I've got a TV screen here, and I've got a DVD or a Blu-ray or disc of your choosing in the middle here. Now, if I zoom out, I'm actually going to first demonstrate this with these two circles at the bottom. I'm going to drag one circle to overlap the other, just as I did with the intersect. And I'm going to select them both and choose difference instead of intersect. Now what that does is it deletes what's overlapping, and it keeps the parts that are not overlapping. And the reason I'm demonstrating this with a situation that looks like it wouldn't come into play is because most of the time when we use difference, it's in a situation where it looks like we don't need difference. And what I mean by that is, in this situation, I would think I could just unite the disk with the screen. If I hit union, it gets all confused because I've got addition and subtraction happening in the screen, and I've got addition and subtraction happening in the DVD. All I really want to do is take the difference between the two and preserve it. So by selecting both and hitting difference, I get exactly that. For some reason, it just understands what I'm trying to do. When you have a lot of positive space and negative space clashing with one another because you have both in both things that you're trying to combine, then difference can be really useful. It can be an absolute lifesaver. There are two more tidbits to talk about. First, I want to talk about flattening your Boolean operations. I'm going to hit O to select my oval tool, and I'm going to hold Shift and drag out to create a circle. Now I'm going to Option drag this to create a second one, select the two, and use intersect to create my football shape, just like the rocket ship down there on the dock. Now, because Sketch preserves our original shapes, this shape is still being made up of two original circles. I can still see these two circles here. And with that, it's no problem. Not right now at least. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a little problem and demonstrate what that fix looks like. I'm going to create another circle. I'm going to hold Option and drag, and I'm going to create a subtraction here. So that way I've got my tail wing for my rocket ship. I'm going to scale it down just a little bit, and you can see that I've got this entire shape combined with this entire shape. So, logically, I'd be able to select both of them, hit union, and make it so. When I do that, though, I just lost the tail of my rocket ship. The tail just kind of popped off and disappeared. So I'm going to hit undo. Now, the reason for that is that the Boolean operations are made up of a circle here, a circle here, a circle here, and then a circle down here. And the circle down here is ultimately deleting from the overall shape. It's taking this plus this and then deleting that circle at the bottom. So what I want to do is I want to take both of these shapes and I want to use flatten on the toolbar so they're no longer made of circles. That's what officially makes them a traditional shape, as if I drew it myself. And if we look over on the layers list, there's no more triangle. These are whole shapes. And with that, I can combine them using union, and now I get exactly what I'm looking for. And then I can go back to using my other Boolean operations, for instance, deleting the very tip of the tail of the rocket ship by selecting both and using subtract. So now order is restored to the world. Another thing to keep in mind is if I were trying to do difference or unite and I accidentally hit subtract, I don't have to hit undo and do it again. Sometimes you change your mind about which Boolean operation you use from a creative perspective, and it's not too late. If we expand a shape that was created from Boolean operations, we don't only get the subpaths, but with the subpaths we also get a little symbol that represents the Boolean operation that was used. So I can click on that and I can switch to a different operation. I could switch to intersect, I could switch to union, or I could switch to none, where Sketch kind of takes it upon itself to determine how a path and a subpath should interact. Usually it's pretty much equivalent to using difference. So it's very nice that Sketch gives us that flexibility of making a change to both the subpaths and the way the subpaths are interacting with one another at any time unless we've flattened it. One last note to inspire you about Boolean operations. If you visit learnsketch.com, followed by the store, and take a look at the icon megapack, almost every single one of these icons I created by hand using Boolean operations and simple shapes. I did not hand draw pretty much any of these shapes. Sometimes I got ambitious and modified a simple shape to turn it into a skewed or distorted and more complex shape, but for the most part these are all created using simple Boolean operations and using simple, sometimes edited shapes. Take a look at the icon megapack and pick out some of your favorite icons and see if you can recreate them.